Hey everyone, welcome to episode 2 in my How to Make an Egg Hunt series. Hope you're all having a great Easter if you are celebrating. And today we are going to be looking at data stores. So how do we save the eggs which a player has gotten? So you may be wondering how this will work, and many of you might not have even done any data store work before. But the way data store works is it's pretty simple. All we do is we tell the script, we give it a key. For each player, they have their own key, which uniquely identifies their data, which will be stored in the DataStore service. And then we can write data to their key or get the data from their key. So we can use getAsync to grab the data from the data store and setAsync to set the data store. Now you can't just save objects to a data store because it's not allowed to do that. You can't just save an egg. So the way we're going to do it is we're going to have a folder in the player which gets generated when they join the game. And then whenever they step on an egg, we are going to insert a string value into that folder with the name of the egg. Okay, so I've just stepped on the rainbow egg, and you can see a string, well, it doesn't have to be a string value, or it just has to be a value. It could be any object really, just as long as it's got like a thing with its name in there. So I've gone for a bool value. As long as it's named whatever the egg is called, we've basically got a temporary store of all of the eggs that you've caught currently in the game. So when you catch a new egg, it will add those values in there. And then what we can do is when we leave the game, we can loop through this egg folder. And then what we can do is we can insert into a table the names of all of these values here, all of these value objects. So we could insert egg of Doge, mystery egg, and rainbow egg into our table. And you're allowed to save tables. So what we're doing is we're saving a table of all of the eggs that we've found so far. Okay, and we're going to be inserting into this table when we find an egg. So we'll be able to keep track of how many eggs we've got in the game, which will be useful in the next part of the video series when we will be making a collection GUI, like an inventory GUI. But also it helps us because then we can just save the names of those eggs in that folder to the data store, and then when we rejoin the game, we can just get them from our data store and then insert them back into that inventory. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. And don't forget, if you are enjoying the series so far, then why not show your support by liking the video, subscribing if you haven't already. You can also become a channel member by clicking the join button next to the subscribe button to get some cool perks and also to be able to download all of the source code and GUIs. Okay, so let's get going. I'm going to insert another script into the server script service. I'm going to call this script data, although you can call it whatever you like. Now, once we've done this, I'm going to create a player added event listener. And what that's going to do is it's going to fire some code when a player joins the game. So game go back in here. Game.players.player added, :connect, function, and then in these brackets, we're going to have the argument, so the player that will join the game. Okay, so this player object here, this player here, that's going to be the player who joins the game. So whatever we do to this player, this will be their player object, will be done to any player who joins the game. So firstly, don't want to have that. We want to insert a folder into their player. We want to insert that X folder. Now, here's what it's going to look like. So I'm just going to change that to player. Here we go. So firstly, we are instancing a folder. So we're inserting a folder, and we've tied it to a variable called eggs folder so we can easily reference it. We've then set its name to eggs, and we're parenting it inside the player's object so that that folder that I just showed you gets created whenever you join the game. Next, what we need to do is we need to check to see if you've got any eggs saved currently, because if you have, then we're going to have to load them into that folder. So we're going to use DataStore. So let's insert, well, firstly, let's get the DataStore service. So local DataStore service, and that is going to be game : get service DataStore service. Okay, I'm just speeding things up a little bit so that we can get this tutorial done a little bit faster, because that's what we all want. Next thing we want to do is we want to actually get our data store. We've got the service, but we need to actually create our data store for this place. So we can say local DataStore equals DataStore service : get data store. And inside of these brackets, inside speech marks, you're going to have to give your data store for this place a name. So I'm going to call it egg hunt. Again, you can call it whatever you'd like, as long as it's, it's a good idea to have it something similar to what the game's about, so you actually can easily understand it, and if anyone else looks at it, they'll know what the data store is for. And it's just for this place. So now that we've done that, I'm just going to create a variable for replicated storage, because we're probably going to be using that quite often because our eggs folder is in there. So local replicated storage equals game, get service, replicated storage. Awesome, we're ready to go. Now what we need to do first is we need to create a variable, and that variable is going to be our data. Now we're not going to set it to anything yet, but we're just having it here so that if there is any data that we find, we can set that variable to be the data, if there is any found. Next, what we need to do is we need to actually get the data from the data store. So we're going to say data, we're going to set that data to be DataStore get async. So this is going to the data store in the cloud on a server somewhere owned by Roblox, and we're going to ask it if it's got any data for our particular player. But we need to give it that key, that thing that uniquely identifies the player. So we're going to say egg data, that's going to be my key, and the key could be anything as long as it just uniquely identifies the player. The egg data part just tells us that it's the key for their collected eggs. So if you wanted to call it collected eggs, you could do so. So I'm just going to call it egg data. And then I'm going to do a hyphen. You don't have to do a hyphen. I'm just doing it to separate the player ID, which is coming next, from the egg data, so it's easier to read. And then we're going to concatenate it with the player's ID, because the player's ID is unique, and only you are going to have your unique ID. So every player is going to have a different user ID. So we can say ... player.user ID, and the ... just concatenates it with the string. So now we've got a unique reference for our key. So for example, my key might be egg data hyphen 14943069, because that is my Roblox ID. Now nobody else is going to have that key, because I am the only person on Roblox to have the ID 14943069. And if you don't know user ID, if you go to your Roblox profile, it'll appear in the URL. Okay, it's that string of numbers right there. Next, what we need to do is we need to put this in a P call, because data stores might go down or they might fail, and when they fail, they'll cause an error in the script, and when we get an error, it will stop the entire script, which means nobody's data will get saved or loaded from then on, and we don't want that. If there's one error with one player, we don't want to break the whole script for everybody else. So what we can do is use a P call, and a P call will catch an error if there is one. So if there's an error, it won't break the entire script, it will keep it running, but it will catch that error before it breaks the rest of the script and stops it from running. So it contains it within that P call. So local, and then we're going to have two variables, success and error message. So if everything went well, success is going to be true, and there's not going to be an error message, so this will be nil. But if it wasn't a success and something went wrong, so there was an error, success would be false, but error message would have the error tied to this variable. So it's a good way of tracking any errors without breaking the script. So equals P call, and then in brackets we're going to say function, and another pair of brackets here, and then we're going to indent this data line and add an end with a closing bracket like this. So this is our P call. So now what we want to do is we want to check to see if it was a success. So if success, then that just means if success was true and everything went well, then we know that the data store request was successful. We managed to poll Roblox's data store servers, and it's either sent us back some data, or there was no data stored for the player. There might be a new player to the game. So if success and data, so if data is not nil, and if there is actually some value associated with this variable, which there currently isn't, but we're updating it here. Now, when we have got the data, there should be some data. Then what we're going to do is we're going to loop through the data, because the data that we get is going to be a table. We're going to save it later on to be a table like this. So we're going to have egg name, comma, egg name. Okay, so we're going to have all the egg names in this table as strings separated by commas. So what we're going to do is we're going to loop through them using a for loop. So we're going to say for underscore, because we're not using the index variable, there's no need for it. For underscore, egg name in pairs, and then we're going to loop through the data, which is going to be a table. Then, do, and then we're going to say an end down here to close that for loop. Now for every single egg in the table, we're going to loop through it. And so whatever we do in this for loop is going to it's going to happen for each item in the table. So for the every egg name, we need to firstly check if it is an actual egg in replicated storage in that folder in replicated storage called eggs. Because if it is a real egg, there will be an associated egg model or part in there. So if replicated storage dot eggs, find first child egg name, then we know that it is a real egg, okay? And maybe if the data store got corrupted or someone tried to exploit and put a name of an egg that wasn't actually in there or something, or we accidentally deleted the egg out the folder, we're just doing this if statement to check for any potential errors that may arise. What we can do is we can then insert that value into their eggs folder. Because remember I said earlier that when you get an egg, it's going to insert that value into your player. We need to then save all the names of those values, so basically all the eggs you have in the data store. But then when we rejoin the game, you're going to have to reinsert that folder. It's going to be empty, so we have to loop through all of the eggs that have been saved in the data store, and we then need to insert the value for each one again, so that we can see all of the eggs that you currently have in your player. So local egg value equals instance.new, and I'm choosing a bool value. You could do a string value or anything else. You could even do a model or another folder. But I'm doing a bool value because it's just, simple, and we usually do use bool values or string values when we're doing this sort of stuff. So egg value.name equals egg name. Okay, pretty simple. We're just setting the value's name to whatever the egg is that was in that data store table. And then we're going to put the egg value inside of that eggs folder. So egg value.parent equals eggs folder. All right, brilliant. So we've just now set it up so that if there is data stored in your data store, then it's going to loop through all of that data and it's going to insert a value for every egg that's inside this table. Now, we haven't actually made the saving work yet, but what we can do is I'm just going to do a test on my end to see if the loading is working, because I'm going to insert some dummy data into my data store from a plugin which allows me to edit it, okay? So I'm going to go into the data store editor by CrazyMan32. You can get this plugin if you like. I'll leave it in the description, but it's not essential. It's just a way to test if they're working and to debug them. So the data store name is going to be egg hunt, because that's what I put up here in the data store name. And then we're going to click connect. Don't worry about the scope. Oh, whoops, I need to go to home, game settings, options, and allow HTTP request and enable studio access to API services. Try again. Okay, now I need to put the player's key in, so the unique identifier for a player, and that's going to be egg data, that was the name of the key, hyphen, and then my user ID, 1494306.9. Okay, no data. Excellent. So there is no data because we haven't written to the data store yet. But when we save data, we should be able to go into this plugin and see the data that we've saved. Okay, so we'll leave this open for now with our data, with our key in there, and now we're going to script the saving of data, so hopefully we can check it out in this editor and see it loaded back in. So this next part is going to be pretty easy. We've got over the hard part now, so we're on the home straight. So we're going to do game.players.player removing. So this is the same as player added, but it's just a little bit different in that the event is going to run. It's going to be triggered when a player leaves the game, okay? Not when they join, but when a player leaves. So we're going to do player removing, connect, function, player. Okay? So now, what we need to do is we need to get all of the eggs inside of their folder, that eggs folder that we created. And then we need to put them in a table to save it to the data store, because we're taking the data, we're getting it in table form. So we need to save it in table form. So let's create an egg table. Local eggs table, and we're just going to do a blank table for now. Now we need to loop through all of those egg values in their player eggs folder. So I'm going to say for underscore again, because we're not using the index value. We have no need for that, so you can just make it a hyphen if you're not using it. For underscore, comma, egg in pairs, and then we're going to be looping through player.eggs get children. Okay, so all of the things inside that eggs folder, which is going to be their values. And this isn't the eggs folder in replicated storage or in workspace. It's actually going to be in their player object because we create it at the start. So for everything inside of this folder, we're going to insert it into the table. So for each egg, we're going to insert into the eggs table the egg name. So egg.name. We're going to insert that into the eggs table. Okay, brilliant. And then just for some extra peace of mind that it actually has been inserted, you could print out egg.name. Okay, and that will just print out if it's been inserted. Next thing, we need to set async. So we need to send the data to Roblox's data stores, and we need to tell it that we want to save this table to our player's key. So to do that, we're going to say DataStore :set async, and then inside of here, we firstly need to give the key. So the same key that we've done up here to uniquely identify a player and their data store. So egg data hyphen, and then we'll do ..player.userid. So it has to be the exact same as you've done up here in the get async. They can't be different, okay? And a lot of people are saying, well, why do you have to have this string here at the start with a hyphen? You actually... Okay, so if you have multiple data stores, so let's say you have a data store for your coins or your cash and then your eggs that you've got, okay? If you just used player.userid, then you'd have the same key for two different data stores. So eventually it would overwrite. So if you were writing your cash to the data store with user ID and then you wrote your egg data, you wrote the egg data with the same key without a string or anything, you'd be overwriting the cache. So you need different keys, and you do that by having a string before it with the name of the thing that you're saving, and that way you have two separate keys. And it also just keeps it easy to understand what you're saving. So now that we've written out the key, we need to do a comma, and we need to write the actual thing that you want to save to this data store. So I'm going to save the eggs table, okay? So second thing is the thing that you're going to save, and that's going to be the eggs table, and by now it will be full of eggs, okay, because we've used this for loop to loop through all of the eggs in your player's folder, and then we're using table.insert, which will insert the eggs name into the table. And then when it comes to get async, then we will be able to get that table from the data store, which was saved the last time you left, and it will be full of strings of eggs names. And then what we can do is we can loop through that data, which we got from the data store. We can check if it is actually in the eggs folder, and if it is, then we can insert that egg value back into your folder. Okay, so what we now need to do is we need to do another p call in case the set async goes wrong. So same thing again, local success, error message equals p call function, and if there are any errors that arise during the saving, maybe data stores go down, because they do go down. If you've ever gone into a Roblox game and your data's been lost or corrupted, that's probably because the data stores went down or there's a problem. So that's why p calls are so important, that it doesn't break your script. So we can then say if success, then print saved, else print error message, because the else statement will only run if success is false, and when success is false, then obviously there will be an error message, so we can print it out. Okay, so now let's go ahead and test it out. Now, again, I'm just going to tell you that in order for this to work in Roblox Studio, you firstly need to publish the place, then you need to go to Game Settings, Options, and make sure that Enable Studio Access to API Services is turned on, okay? Now, you can also test it in a Roblox game if it's not working for you. If it isn't working for you, it is kind of hard to debug data stores, but don't be down if it doesn't work, okay? Because data stores are the hardest things to debug, because you don't get much error data from them, but just keep trying, okay? And make sure you followed the tutorial to a T. So, let's head into the game. Now, we're going to have to collect some eggs, obviously. You can see that the eggs folder has been added into my player, which is a good start. And we need to go and pick up an egg. And let's firstly see if it gets added into our folder. Let's see. I don't think we scripted that, actually. Okay, we didn't script that, actually. That was my bad. We actually need to script in the egg spawns to insert it into your folder when you actually pick up an egg, because we're only inserting into your folder right now when we're loading the saved data, but you can't have any saved data if you can't pick up any eggs to begin with. So what we're going to do is inside this egg clone.touched event here, if player, then what we can do is just after this found egg fire client, let's write if player find first child eggs. So if they have that egg folder inside their player, then we're going to check to see if it isn't already there. So if there is a value for that egg already there, then we know that they've touched an egg that they've already picked up. So we don't want to have loads and loads and loads of the same values for the same egg. So we only want one egg, one value per egg. So we need to check if it's not already there. So if not, player.eggs find first child egg clone dot name, then, and then it had an end here. So now if we get inside this if statement, we know that the egg isn't already in the player, okay, because we've used the not, and the not is like the inverse. So if the egg is not in the player's eggs folder already, then we can add it, okay? So we can say local egg value equals instance dot new, and I'm doing a bool value again, just to keep it consistent with the other script which inserts bool values. Egg value dot name equals egg clone dot name, and egg value dot parent equals player dot eggs. And again, don't worry about it being a bool value. It could be any type of value, just as long as it's an object that we can give a name to, because we're not worrying about the value property, whether it's a bool value, string value, number value, int value, etc. We don't care, as long as we just have an object which we can give a name, and then we can read that name from the DataStore script, okay? So let's head over and pick up one of these eggs. Let's open up the eggs folder. Now watch it carefully, see if an arrow appears, which will mean that there's something inside of it when we step on the egg. Okay, brilliant, it did. We found the rainbow egg, and now you can see inside the eggs folder, we have that rainbow egg, a value. Now, what we should expect to see now is when we leave the game, the script is going to loop through everything in this eggs folder, and it's going to add it to a table. So we should have a table with that rainbow egg inside of it when we leave the game, and that should be saved to our data store. Now, let's see what happened. Okay, we left the game, and it printed out rainbow egg. Now, one thing we're also going to do is, because if you're the last player in the game, then what could happen is that when you leave the game, the server could immediately shut down, and it could shut down before this data store code is finished. Now, in the case of studio testing, this could happen because you're going to be the only player in the game. So when you leave the game, when you click that stop button, it could happen that the game, the play solo, just shuts down before your data store code is finished. So what we're going to do is we're going to prolong the server from, well, when the server does shut down, we're going to keep it running and make sure that everyone's data is saved before it shuts down. And you can do this by something called bind to close. Let me show you what this is about. So if you say game bind to close, then you have open brackets, and you can put a function in here just like you do an event like this. Then inside of here, what will happen is when the server is about to shut down, it won't shut down until code inside of here is executed. Okay, so the server will only shut down when we've finished. And inside of here, I've done a for loop for all players in the game. And then what I've done is I've copied the code from this player removing just into this for loop. So every player in the game is going to have their data saved that is currently in the game. So if you're the last player in the game, then it's going to save your data for you. Even though you've left, the server is still open, so it's going to be able to do this for you, okay? So it's just saving your data if you have left the game when the server is shutting down, if you're the last person. And that will make sure that your data does get saved. Because sometimes you can leave the game and you've done everything correctly in your data store, but it's still not saving. And it's probably because you're the last person in the game and the server has shut down before your data store code is executed. So this code, it will create another eggs table folder, and for every single egg in your player.eggs folder, it will insert that egg, and then it will set it to your data store, and if it was a success, it will then print that it's saved on bind to close for you. Okay, and bind to close, BTC. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just change the name of my data store here, because I have done some testing before I've showed you this, and I've currently got some data in my key. So we're using a brand new data store called egghunt2. When you change the name of this, it will just basically, everyone who joins the game will have brand new data because it's a different data store. If you were to change it back to egghunt, then it would have the data that I've just saved. But let's try again then. Let's go into the game. And again, players, admin blocks, and the eggs folder is currently empty. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go pick up an egg. This one here, a rainbow egg. And step on it. Okay, great. You found the rainbow egg, and it's gone into our folder here. If I try and step on it again, okay, it still says you found the rainbow egg, but it hasn't inserted another egg into the folder because we did that check with the if statement earlier. So that's good. Now let's leave the game. it should loop through our eggs folder and insert that rainbow egg into the table, and it has because it's printed out rainbow egg. And now I've just rejoined the game, and there we go. I've got my rainbow egg still in here, so it's managed to save my data. We leave the game again. Okay, and it said saved, and we head back in, and eggs, rainbow egg, it's still in there. Okay, and just to show you, if I head in here and I insert a string or another ball value, it doesn't matter what it is. I'm just going to call it test123, and we stop the game. I've done that on the client as well. You can see it printed out test123, and we join the game again, and we're going to eggs. Oh, it's not there. You know why? Because test123 isn't an actual egg in the eggs folder. So what it's done is it's tested that, and because it's not an actual egg, it didn't add it into our folder. So there we go. That's a working DataStore script. Now, if it isn't working for you, test it in a Roblox game. Okay, you can see here it saved it on bind to close. So sometimes in Studio it might not work, and I'm not sure why that happens, but hopefully the bind to close does fix that. But I think it should work perfectly in a proper Roblox game. So that is going to be the end for today's part, Egg Hunt Part 2. If you would like to get the code, you can become a channel member, a premium channel member for $4.99 a month. Help support the channel as well. You can click the join button underneath the video by the subscribe button, and make sure that you like the video as well and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, hopefully in the next part, if I manage to get around to doing that, hopefully it will be soon, then we'll be learning how to make an inventory UI where it shows you all of the eggs that you've currently got. So make sure you subscribe for that, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Alvin Blocks, signing off. Cheers. Bye.